we help maintain the purity of the body in this that Paul talks about? And there is a judgment aspect. I mean, Paul says, don't even eat with such a brother who's in sexual sin in 1 Corinthians 5. And then yet, at the same time, give room for process for people. And that was always the trouble, right? That was always the issue that we had. And we actually treated members differently when we did non-members. Still trying to be centered, but there was a point in time where we called them, they became part of the body. You're held to a higher standard. Sure. Because so how do you help, where have you seen perhaps that's worked well, where they've been able to call people to that and give room for people to process at the same time?
Yeah. So again, I think let's start with the negative example. So fuzzy is all about belonging, not like it would be okay to not believe. I mean, they can't say even sort of what are you supposed to believe. But in the long run, it's not a great place to belong because it's so fuzzy. There's not security there. Okay, so that is not the way to go. And just to say to have things have clarity on this is who we are, this is what we believe. And I say in the book, defining your center is a very, very important part of this. So yeah, I think, and I appreciate what you said about having a different standard. I mean, I think in the sense that, yeah, as people make commitment towards the center, then they're in a different situation. They have said, this is the journey I'm on, I'm in this. And I think the language itself is very important. So one of the things that I advocate in the book is, or make the observation, a leader cannot do this by himself or by herself. So if you're leading a small group, you read the book and say, okay, I got to be centered. You can't do it by yourself. If you're a pastor, you can't just read the book and then say, we're going to be centered because and going to go to the example. So if I'm leading a small group Bible study and I'm seeking to be centered, but the people in the group are very fuzzy, the group is still going to be fuzzy. Or if they're very bounded, it's still going to be bounded. So I advocate for introducing the people to the language, to these concepts, so that there can be a shared understanding. This is who we are. And not everyone's going to read the book. I made a series of 5 videos to make it easier, but yeah, introduce people to the concept. So then to your purity question, if we have this shared sense of we are centered on Jesus and that's what it means, then I think the belonging, a belief coming is not as threatening or problematic because there's this clear sense our center matters and your orientation to the center matters. So whereas, a bounded group, it's the line. And so it's just, have you crossed the line or not crossed the line? It's neat. And you can't have the messiness. But I think if you bring a bounded mentality to a centered church, it can feel like, oh, you don't take belief seriously. But I'd say, no, in a centered approach, you could take belief seriously. And if you're articulating, letting people know, I think it's, I think it has greater evangelistic potential because it's not just saying belonging is enough. The people that are visiting, they're going to pick up, oh, it's about orientation to this center. That matters.
It does matter. I mean, of course, it is that center, as you mentioned. And what we tried to do is, we did have membership as kind of a line of demarcation, but it just meant you were to a higher standard. We still gave people opportunity to belong and to be a part of different things. There were certain things that they just couldn't do yet because they weren't committed to the process, but we would give room. And again, not that ours was a perfect system, and it was one that we were always working with and trying to tweak. And I particularly, it was a challenge for me when I first got there, just because I'd come from a bounded set church and that's what I was used to. And we were in counting situations. We were in the city, And when you encounter people in the city, you just see it more openly, and I think more frequently than you do in suburbia, where it's much more covered, and you can hide behind a deep, a veneer. And I do wonder, when you're looking at this centered set approach, do you see any differentiation between cultures, how they go about this? Like as you've written on honor shame,
Yes.
I think of an Asian culture
Yep.
where it's much more higher. I mean, even though being from Honduras, is that more of an honor shame
Well,
cultural?
it's more honor shame than here in the United States, not as much as Asia. But yes, certainly it would be lived out in different ways because, what living confrontation that might work without disintegrative shaming in suburban United States might be deeply shaming in a disintegrative way in, Japan or Thailand or something like that. So I think and Hiebert developed this in India. I mean, so it's not a Western bound concept, but I think the application of it will vary in different cultural settings.